They often say don't judge a book by its cover, right?
A book by its cover, otherwise, me and many designers like me will be out of job.
How does the design team collaborate with authors or editors?
It's extremely collaborative at Penguin, from receiving the cover brief to sending the cover to press.
Hardbound and those kind of, so how do these dynamics play in making a decision and also sometimes convincing the author that chill, let's have this?
We do have a formula for that, and we put number of pages, what's the size, and what's the investment, design cost, production cost, any editorial cost, etc., and then we do the maths.
As per Wikipedia, the phrase "you can never tell a book by its cover" was popularized when it was first appeared in the murder mystery Murder in a Glass Room by Lester Fuller and Edwin Rolfe. So let's talk about book design from a designer's lens. I have a multiple award-winning designer, Ahlawat Gunjan, with us on Audiogan. He's a head of design at Penguin Random House, India. Ahlawat has master's degree in graphic design from Glasgow School of Art, and previous to that, he spent a semester in Indiana-Purdue University, USA, focusing on design thinking, innovation, and leadership. He's from NID Ahmedabad. Today, we'll talk about what goes into book cover design, the secrets behind the publishing world, and future of digital books. And of course, at the end, we'll talk about Ahlawat's favorite books and tips for designers to get into this fascinating world of book design. So, welcome Ahlawat to Audiogan, and it's a real pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for giving your time.
No, it's been lovely to be here, and thanks for including me in your esteemed list. It's a privilege to be here. Thank you.
Pleasure is mine. So, as I mentioned in the introduction, I wanted to understand what this world is little opaque. So we'll try and figure out what goes into designing a book, publishing a book. I wanted to ask like a more cliche question to begin with, but it will set the ball rolling. Which is, they often say don't judge a book by its cover, right? So although I understand metaphorically meaning is different, but how does it feel for you as a designer, right? How true is it in the world of book design?
Well, Kedar, you must judge a book by its cover, otherwise, me and many designers like me will be out of job. No, jokes apart, it's a very critical element for a book's visual personality, and it lasts out there for many years. So it's a huge responsibility on a designer's shoulder to do it responsibly, creatively, and in today's context, keeping climate change in mind. There's lots that goes into that 10-second, 30-second frame when a reader interacts with it, but a lot that goes into it. So it's a fairly serious profession by its virtue.
So can we start with like some fundamental principles of making an effective book cover design? Like what are the parameters, and then how do you balance out kind of aesthetics versus storytelling? Like just a brief landscape of how does it come to be?
For me, two very basic pillars are strength and clarity. By strength, I refer to the power in the visual, both type and the image combined, to hold your attention, to be a head turner. And by clarity, I mean the effectiveness and the ease with which a visual slash cover, in my case, would communicate its content. So, along with a whole host of principles and theories that we go at a design school, etc., these two really stand out for me, and these are two filters that I constantly use in all my publishing work.
Hmm. But does it has to do with like where it will be kept also, because then the dynamics will change, right? Like a shelf presence also makes an important pillar. So how do you like what are the then ancillary pillars or ancillary conditions for you to make a decision?
It's a mixed bag of things. See, you can't really control where the book will be shown tomorrow. But we do keep bookshelf in mind. We do keep online presence in mind. And those modalities do come into both typography and imaging and the overall style that you want to present in the cover.
Got it. So and how do these dynamics change when it comes to different genres, especially say like a literary fiction versus a children's book or say a biography?
That is the first question as designers we ask at Penguin. More so, the way I see it, that it's a design challenge and it's not an art challenge. And the equation is brutally clear in my head. Once you know that you are working, who you're working for, all the decisions around the image, typography, semiotics, and the overall style start to fall in place. So let's say for literary fiction, one could push the design envelope, design temperature slightly high, as these audiences are fairly clued into art and aesthetics and can afford to take that certain degree of risk and creative liberty with them. So I think literary fiction is delight to any designers. And one name that really pops in my head is Peter Mendelssohn, who worked at Penguin US office for many years, and I'm an ardent lover of his work. On contrary, say for children, it's a very tricky genre because it is important to understand the buying pattern. Are parents buying it, or the children's making those buying decisions? And therefore, you have to. So, say for toddlers, definitely it's going to be parents. So, while imaging may be according to children, but the blurb that you write at the back of the book, what the book is about, why is it different from ABC book, is for parents really, because probably parents are going to read it to children. But when you go up in the ladder in the age group, then the design strategy also changes.
Yeah, so I'm going to take a question which is not scripted as such, because I thought we'll start with like more fundamental things, like what happens in a book cover. Also, there's a back, there's a front, and there's a spine or something. So if you can give us a flavor of what how do you go about designing this?
It's a layered process, and how a reader interacts and then buys a book. So when you enter a bookstore, and I have myself seen it firsthand, a cover definitely is the face of the book. So a cover attracts the reels in the reader. It is those 10 to 20 to 30 seconds when the person picks the book, looks at the cover, turns it around, reads the back matter. Probably that back matter would invite him or her to read a para in introduction or preface or something. It's that time when the decision is made to buy the book or not buy the book. So when a new book comes, it's always showcased in the showcases at the bookstores. But what happens when the new books come in? So they have to go more linear in bookshelf, and that's when the spines come really handy, and they are very important, and one can utilize them as a clear selling point. So in my view, any informed, educated designer would really give huge importance in designing spines.
Because I remember I was in college days. There was a picture. I think Anil Kapoor and Amitabh Bachchan, Preeti Zinta, I think Arman or something. They were doctors, and some movie was there, and the art director didn't have the budget, and I was in college with him, and he said that we have to like plan a set where Amitabh Bachchan is sitting, and on the backdrop there is a like a book shelf, and in that there are all books of medical studies, right? So he went to Nanavati and bunch of other hospitals in India, Mumbai. He clicked photos and he brought them, and I just made the spines, just copy pasted those spines all in Corel Draw back then, and made all those, got it printed, put it on like all cardboards, and like tried to make the shelf look exactly like this. So spine, that my introduction to spine was back then.
But it is a very critical component in selling when selling a book.
Yeah, and then what role does you mentioned art and design? Is this decoupled in the process, or it comes organically to the same person, or how do these dynamics work?
Like I said, in my head, they sit in two different compartments. Design, and I'm a trained designer. I will not call myself a trained artist, but art does seep into what I do. Design is a service, and it has an end user, and therefore it is driven by external factors. Art for me is internally driven. When I paint, I don't care whether you like it or don't like it. It's for me. I'll be lucky if you like it. But design, and then also in art, I don't like to seek feedback probably. But when I design, which is a service and there's an end user, definitely there's bound to be a feedback to better the product and keep bettering it through feedback. And that happens in what we do, even in design, and book design is no exception to that concept. So that's how I keep two very different in my head to start with. And then, see, once you have crossed the design ladder and you have checked certain boxes, then it's also art. Whether you take imaging, arriving at new styles of imaging, making collages, or even using typography as a form of art, and even choosing a right typeface is both art and science. So science is taken care by design, but art is taken care by the intuition and the finer nuances. Oh, the B of the bowels of B are so nice, or the tail of Q is really beautiful. So, and I think those are more aesthetic decisions, and we take liberty, and I think stakeholders allow you to do that. But as far as the right font, which is design.
Got it, got it. And you mentioned you have been sort of experiencing the way people actually interact with the book at the shelf, right? Is there a research team which gets involved in all these stuff? Is this a typical way any book is bought, or there are different patterns? For example, like a bestseller by Salman Rushdie, people just go and buy, or Atomic Habits, people just go and buy, right? Like, don't even bother to read it because they know already about the book. So, are there other big patterns? Obviously, there will be long tail patterns, but any big patterns in that?
No, I don't think so. But what I do personally and encourage my team to do at Penguin is that go and talk to readers in the bookstores, go meet booksellers, make a relationship with them because they are the best catalysts, to tell you what works, what doesn't work, and why it works and why it doesn't work. Having those, and I think design, building those relationships, those human relationships is very integral to a good design process. So I definitely push my team to go and use booksellers as those human libraries and not just sit in front of your screen, because it can take you to certain extent only. And that's where I always say that bring the AI now.
So going beyond the cover, what design elements go in making a creative, cohesive reader experience? Say typography, layout, illustration. As how is the team structured? Also, for example, at Penguin, you do the entire book from typesetting to everything, or it's your team just does the cover. Like, if you could help us understand.
Sure. So most of our books are fiction, non-fiction, so heavily text-based in that sense. So our involvement with those books is to do the cover, but we also do, say, children's book, like I mentioned. We also do cookbooks sometimes. We also do visually heavy books like Indica or Invisible Empire. When it is about an illustrated book like Invisible Empire, yes, it's from front cover to back cover, and everything in between has been handled, from template to looking at the technical aspects of images, layouts, consistency, everything, and of course supervising the printing. When it comes to children's book, of course, commissioning the artworks from for cover, for insides, choosing right typography, layouts, storytelling aspect is really important in that. So everything put together into this cohesive package. But to answer your question, I think at Penguin, 80% of our work is covers, and rest falls into 20%.
And how big is the team in India? Like, how many designers?
We are seven of us, and then we outsource hell lot of work because we produce like some 350 books in a year.
Yeah, extending that forward, how does the design team collaborate with authors or editors? What's the typical process? Like, suppose a script comes in a Word doc. How, like, I'm just very interested and curious to understand how this entire process works from a person thinking about a book and writing, and do they write a small piece, come to you, pitch it? I'm interested in writing a book, so also from that lens.
I have to say, it's extremely collaborative at Penguin, from receiving the cover brief to sending the cover to press. Design team gets the written brief from the commissioning editor, and when the editor is writing the cover brief, he or she is in touch with the author and the sales, because if there are how sales is planning to position the book, so those inputs are really required in the cover brief, and those are important for designer to understand at the very beginning of it. Author, because if there are something which is very pertinent, or ex author is very particular about something, it's nice to hear from them at this point in time. Views may change when they finally see the cover options, but it helps to build a solid, clear foundation to build the cover designs upon. It also helps sort of a checklist, because we deal with human beings and there could be a lot of ifs and buts at the end of it. So it's just nice to sort of have a lattice, a framework to work, to push and pull from. And then when the cover briefs comes in, a designer takes about 4 to 5 weeks, and we come up with 3 to 4 distinctly different cover options. And then we present them at our weekly jackets meeting. This meeting is attended by our sales team, whole of editorial and marketing and design. And we all sit in this big room and we present the covers to the whole cohort. And then we have a discussion around what works, what doesn't work. And once we have a clear idea as what options are working and why, we choose and we send option or options to the author. An author may like it instantly and approve, may have some feedback for you, or may not like it at all, which takes a designer back to the drawing board. And then the process repeats. When we are doing that, when I said the designer is working on those 3 to 4 options, I always encourage, and my personal thing is I would like to have a phone call with the author. If he or she is based in Delhi, I would love to go and meet them in person. It always helps. After this process, the front cover gets approved first, because the sales team would need it for catalog and other marketing purposes. So we lock the front cover first, but a designer sets the full spread, mechanical as we call it, close to the publication day, 45 days in advance of the publication day. And that's where copy editors come into picture, who will proofread every word that goes onto the cover. Once it's been okayed by the copy editor, we hand over the files to production. Designer hands over the files to production with all the specifications of paper, printing, new printing technique, budgets, etc., etc. Depending upon the nature of the project, whether it's a cover or it's a full book, a designer would also assist production of it. So we visit our presses quite often to do any last minute damage control at the press, or a designer is just overtly excited about certain, because colors is a very tricky thing to achieve. What you see on screen, and then we also get digital proofs, but like we all know, it's never going to match. So you have to be there to do that little bit of tweaking to get the desired results.
Got it. And most of it will be, I think everything will be offset, right?
Everything is off.
And when you said you have a little boardroom kind of a meeting where you pitch it to the salespeople, and is there like any particular reason why not to have everyone together, the author as well, or you just want to have interim sort of buy-in and then go out to the end person?
It's nicer, and this is a practice that's been globally practiced by all the design teams, because it's just nice to have first an internal consensus and then go with a more definitive answer to the author.
And when the author is not really happy, is there a pattern that you have seen over the years of not liking the art, or not liking the design aspect of it, the art aspect of it? Is there, like, because finally the author is a creative person, so they'll have their own whims and fancies, maybe sketch out something like, is have you encountered any moments of big friction?
Yes and no, Kedar, and it's a different question which we talk a lot in design community. Is it designer's job to educate the user, or just let them figure it out? And I think that's where your question really plugs in. Is it a book designer's job to educate an author and say, hey, listen, I hear you out completely, but this font or that font wouldn't work or works, or this image style works or doesn't work? And it takes me back to my design, why this is designed, because it's an informed choice that you have made through your experience, through your qualification, your experience, and your intuition. Coming back to your question, yes and no, those things do happen. And that's when I pick up the phone and try to explain, as designers, we are also selling our work, also negotiating our work. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose while it's their work, but it's the publisher who's investing into the project. Our logo, which is also our legacy, is going on that cover. And the very reason you are coming to a penguin for a certain quality and certain standards. How an author is the authority on writing, an editor is an authority in editing, and sales is an authority in selling the book right way. Design team is an authority in what they do. And sometimes I feel those boundaries get blurred. I'm sensing that happening more than often because everybody's brother, sister, spouse, maid, cat, or dog got a preference. So for a designer, yeah, it could be really annoying actually. And I don't want to name here, but I have experienced that. My 3-year daughter doesn't like this.
I know what you mean, and I think that's where our job becomes more challenging. Where, at as you grow in the career, I think the evangelizing part or explanation or education part becomes very critical. But had there been any instances where not just Penguin but other publications where there have been some rockstar designers in the parallel world of music where we had Paula Scher, she just design and take it or leave it kind of a thing? As in, like, those kind of instances, have they happened? Like, people just design and say that this is what it is, right?
But at the end, see, we have to, I can't comment on other publishers, how they function, but I know that at the end we can lock horns. But as the creative director, I have to resolve that. So yeah, I think those might be more prolonged discussions, but at the end, I think it all works out beautifully.
There's also one more obviously big lever, which is money, which was my next question. So what factors also influence the size or the dimensions of the book, right? From content, just the sheer number of words and characters placed in a paper, and then that goes along the target audience. We have paper book and hardbound and those kind of. So how do these dynamics play in making a decision, and also sometimes convincing the author that, dude, like, chill, let's have this?
It depends how a book is acquired, what is the market like, and how we as publishers want to position the book. It changes with every book, but what remains consistent is our underlying passion, commitment to make it a success. Regarding size, number of words per page, those are more sales and editorial call because different books are produced at a different price point and are sold at a different price point. So, depending upon the manuscript, I think those decisions, those checks and balances, or no, permutation combinations are done during the acquisition times and how a book is priced, like I said.
The publication decides the price point again, or it's also a somewhat author's call? Because obviously publisher here is more aware with the market, more tuned in with the cycle, overall life cycle of a book. Where does that?
It's not the publisher really, it's the sales team.
Okay, but it happens within the publishing house.
We do have a formula for that, and we put number of pages, what's the size, and what's the investment, design cost, production cost, any editorial cost, etc. And then we do the maths, and then we see is this book too expensive for this genre, this market. Then we try to figure out, let's recalculate it at a different size, and if it's also working for the reader and for the publisher. So there are you have to rejig a few things to arrive at that. So it's not one yardstick I can give, and then it varies when it's a one color book vis-a-vis it's a full color book, say for children. And with children, we do attempt unusual sizes also, depending upon the content. There could be cutouts and there could be folds coming out, and everything adds to the cost. Number of pages also, those are far slimmer books than the adult. So it varies. I cannot give one answer to that, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. And also it's very, very dynamic in nature because everything depends on finally the content, right? Like,
Whether it should be a paperback or a hardback. And that is also being informed by the content it's carrying.
Cool. So Ahlawat, I was like just trying to understand with the rise of digital reading, right? How is the role of designers evolving here in the publishing world? Because I have a very few connections in the print world, and there's always print is not dead kind of a poster coming every 10 years. How is the publishing world dealing with, especially from a designer's lens, right? Is there innovation? Is there some trends that you have spotted?
I think it's simply the way I understand it. It is simply expanding the canvas for designers, and I don't think there's anything to worry about it. And while designing, now we need to consider the functioning of digital modalities too. For example, like I said earlier, how the cover would shrink into a thumbnail on Amazon or other digital platforms. So could your type decisions be also considering that it will be shown at a smaller size? Endorsements wouldn't be visible at all at that size. So what are those considerations that you want to take in is important. But I don't think there's something to worry about, because you remember when ebooks came back in 2008 and 9, and we were terribly scared that the majority of the brick and mortar stores were going down all over the world. But give it few years, what has happened? The charm of holding a printed book, the grace of making notes on the pages and folding the pages and smelling the ink, we all started missing that, and we got back to, there's a surge in printed books now. And in India particularly, there the way bookstores are mushrooming, fingers crossed, and I'm really happy for them, is immense, and it's a very optimistic situation here. So I don't think one should worry, but take it as a parallel opportunity along with print.
No, definitely there's a little growing up of or mushrooming of things happening. But if we compare India to rest of the world, I'm sure like very few people read anyway. But the good news was I was in London recently and went to Waterstones, and they had multiple stores across London. And one at, I think, Piccadilly Circus was like a four-story huge building, right? And the sections, the categories, I just went crazy because I've been to Crossword and other places, but this was something not seen before, kind of a situation. Even each airport kind of has bookstores. So how do you see the future of books in the digital age, right? Like, are you seeing any trends? You mentioned that people, there's a charm of handling the book, but is KDP eating into that share? Self-publishing is kind of the big deal now. So any other patterns or thoughts around future of book design, book publishing?
Firstly, I'm not a big believer of trends. I think it's a sheer wastage of time of design communities. So that I will keep outside the window. Digital does eat up slightly into the printed versions, but like I said, the reports, the data that we get constantly from Nielsen is that there's a huge surge in printed books. One thing that I think we need to keep in mind, and with climate changes and challenges and the increasing scarcity of the paper, mills are laboriously working to come up with recycled papers and other successful options. You feeling what's the point in buying a book because it's a wastage and cutting trees, etc., but there's a whole industry that's working to salvage it. One shouldn't feel hesitant about it. And yeah, I mean, we all know that reading a book on Kindle has its own advantages, and you cannot take that away from it. But I would also like to draw attention again to the charm of holding a printed book, because more than ever, it has become an object. And designers like me who put in heart and soul and putting months and months of hard work in making sure every element, every aspect of it comes out right the way one has imagined, won't come to fruition only in digital form.
I'm sure there must be happening some innovation in the bookmarks where there are certain these little gadgets can be there in the physical book which can be placed in for note taking and other digitizing, but finally the book, the paper, the ink will really, we can just keep talking about. I have a lot of more questions, but just to conclude this episode, I have two more questions which is mainly just changing gears towards, so how can one become a book designer, right? Like what is the way, how can one grow in a career? Just a little bit about.
It may sound fancy from outside, but in fact, it may be a torture if you don't like to read. So, for anybody who wants to be in publishing, be prepared. You have to read a hell lot of notes, chapters, and often manuscripts. Because in this reading, you will find hidden answers to your visuals. You need to have a firm grip on design history, type history, art history, semiotics, an understanding of ergonomics, and technical, of course, technical know how of printing technology. And above all, a deeper sense of belief to push the envelope for every cover. It's taking criticism doesn't go anywhere, and I think that's the most courageous thing designers should possess, because like I said, even in publishing we work with stakeholders which who are primarily your clients, and feedback can come from any stakeholder. How, as a designer, as an informed and educated designer, you would objectively argue it back is very critical. Reading at the end, it boils down because you are basically giving a visual personality to an author's 5 years, 10 years, 2 years body of work. And like I said at the beginning, and it's going to last there. So it's a huge responsibility, unlike digital when you can tweak things, change the coding and the image changes. So as a printed object, it's going to last there. So there's a huge sense of responsibility on you to do it correctly.
That's one thing which I miss in the design world. I've spent last 18 years in design world and know that things can be changed with like a single enter button again on the website. In fact, I remember when I joined Web Chutney, which was my first company. It's a digital advertising agency. It's still number one. Back then it was doing some more crazy work. And the creative director, I think he was part of the team where they designed Santro, the car, Hyundai car, Santro logo, and the T is quite funny. And what happened is the printer didn't print it correctly, and that's why the T came funny. But luckily, the client liked that. So yeah, so print is a different world altogether. You may never know what can stay for the rest of your memory just because of some error, and then, or it could be just any intuition, as you said, right?
Correct. I mean, accidents are beautiful too, Kedar.
Yeah, yeah.
Designers can't escape them. Rather, we should just get our hands dirty with that.
Yeah, last one is more of a media type question. Any iconic books where you love the covers, generally outside your body of work, and some which you felt really nice?
One that instantly comes to my mind is Arundhati Roy's God of Small Things. It's going to be 25 years, I think, this year, and it's unchanged, and it has sort of this beautiful impression on our minds, right? Partly she's superbly attached to it, but also it works really well for the book. And sometimes all the aspects of design come together in this rhythmic, dance to turn it into an iconic piece. And honestly, with the design and art prints, all the designs and art principles in place, there is no formula, there is no secret sauce to them, and that is why they're iconic, I believe. The second part, I've designed more than 500 covers till now, and it would be unfair for me to pick them. But let me put it this way, that I have had the privilege and pleasure to work with some of the most iconic writers of our times, from Salman Rushdie to Arundhati Roy, Amitabh Ghosh, Champa Lahiri, Ruskin Bond, Ranjit Hoskote, Gulzar Saab, Uran Pamuk, and many more. The conversations, ideas, the sense of courage that they instill in you and your design, and innovation is of another level altogether. And I just feel blessed with that.
That's very, very encouraging and inspiring. And yeah, all power to you. Thanks a lot, Ahlawat, for giving your time. It was amazing talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so that's it. Thank you. And that's it from today's GAN session. For show notes and more GAN, visit audiogan.com. And if you wish to connect with me, I am at AudioGAN Moments on Instagram. Until then, take care.